here this afternoon with Andrea Tenenti, who's the spokesman for the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon. For an interim force, it's been here an awfully long while. It's been here 46 years. And it's had a sort of series of mandates. Its mandate is formally renewed, but then it's also had to respond to different events and different Security Council resolutions over that time, which means it's quite an organic thing which has grown up here in Lebanon. How do you view the challenges of UNIFIL at the moment?
Well, as you said, interim somehow is a strange concept, especially in the Middle East, where things are way more complicated in terms of sorting out and an implementation of the mandate. There are a lot of sensitivities. So the challenges have been several throughout all this period, but if I have to focus on the recent challenges are, of course, to bring back stability in south of Lebanon. A stability that we had witnessed since from 2006 until October 2023. A lot of work was done in close coordination with the parties, in close coordination with the Lebanese army. A lot of work was done along the blue line to try to visibly mark the blue line. We had a monthly meeting of tripartite, the most important confidence building mechanism within Lebanese army and IDF, almost monthly. Now, of course, the challenge is mainly to restore stability, to bring back the people in south of Lebanon, and to support the Lebanese army in their full redeployment in south of Lebanon, and the full also withdrawal of IDF from the south of the country.
I want to come on to the events of the 26th of January this year, because this was a massacre. There were, the figures I have from the Lebanese Ministry of Health, 26 people killed and 147 injured. I was there myself that day on the lines. I saw somebody shot, thankfully not killed, in front of me, a young boy. And one thing I can say for sure is that the only people I saw carrying weapons were the IDF, UNIFIL, and the Lebanese army. I saw no civilians or militia or anybody else carrying any weapons. These were unarmed people who were shot and killed. And that's on UNIFIL's watch. UNIFIL is there to protect people. And over a period of several hours, people were being shot and killed and over 150 wounded in front of your peacekeepers. I think the world is entitled to ask, what are you doing? And why weren't you doing anything to stop it? The massacre of that many civilians is not a small thing. For my fellow Scots, it's the size of the Glencoe massacre. It's twice the size of the Bloody Sunday massacre, which had huge ramifications for British history. Why were your peacekeepers so inert during this massacre?
Okay, let me say that, first of all, the situation, what happened on the 26th was exactly a very dramatic day. Protection of civilians is definitely part of all peacekeeping missions. Peacekeepers are there to assist the government, in this case the government of Lebanon. The main responsibility on the protection of civilians is usually with the government where we are working. In this case was the Lebanese government. And of course, our responsibility is to protect civilians under imminent threat of violence, and this is what we did when the government cannot assist. So on that particular day, on the 26th of January, we were requested by the Lebanese army, by the Lebanese government, to assist the Lebanese army in that regard. Of course, the limitation of the mandate, that we cannot control the crowd, that is with the Lebanese authorities. So we have been present in different locations, but what it's not said during the day, that definitely 36 people were killed, a large number of people were injured. The mission within our mandate and what we can do under Chapter 6 of the Security Council was to assist the Lebanese army during the day to minimize the risk. There were thousands of people who went to the south of Lebanon. We have been asking the IDF to refrain from firing. At the same time, we have been doing a large number of deconflicting activities with the parties, trying to mitigate the risk in different locations along the blue line, so all along the blue line, 110 kilometers. So definitely that what happened on the day was very dramatic in terms of the number of killed people. The week after, in fact, the situation was very different from the previous week. So we have to see also how much the mission, together with the Lebanese army and Lebanese authorities, have been able somehow to mitigate some of the more dramatic event that could have happened, that could occur that day along the blue line. So I have to say that definitely was a very difficult day, difficult situation. Thousands of people went to the south. Our role as a peacekeeping mission is to mediate within the parties and trying to mitigate the risk. And that's what we did. Again, we are not a mission that can enforce peace. We are not under Chapter 7 of the Security Council. We are under Chapter 6. So what would be the responsibility of the mission? We are not going to use weapons to shoot at the parties, one or the others. We will become part of the conflict in the case. Our role is to mitigate, is to negotiate, is to try to find solutions. And that was done on the day. Despite all the advisories and directories that we also sent to the population through the Lebanese army on preventing people to go to specific areas. So this was done throughout the day and was done the days after, was done the week after and the following week. In fact, the following weeks, actually, the mitigation of some of this situation has been happening, and the situation was basically less violent the following weeks.
Let me come to that question of what your mandate is, because the UNIFIL put out like an exculpatory statement afterwards saying, well, it's not our fault, it's not part of our mandate to manage the crowd. But what your mandate is, in 1701, it says that UNIFIL will extend its assistance to civilian populations and the voluntary and safe return of displaced persons. Mm-hmm. So the voluntary and safe return of displaced persons is part of your mandate directly. It's not your mandate to stop them going or tell them not to go. And it's not your mandate to let them be shot when they go. So, and I'm not suggesting you should have opened fire on the Israeli troops, because as you say, you don't have a Chapter 7 mandate, mm-hmm. So you would not be allowed to. But where I was, in Kfir Kila, for example, where 4 people were shot dead, as you approached the town, you saw UN heavy armor, about a mile back. Then you came in and there was another line of the Lebanese army, and then just beyond that, about another 100 yards, was the barricade put up, or sandbank basically, by the Israeli forces. And then about 50 yards beyond that were the Israeli forces who were firing at people and basically shooting anyone who approached the sandbank. But the UN forces, until 4 o'clock in the afternoon when they came in, kept deliberately back from where the shooting was. Surely, you have these huge armored vehicles. You don't have to shoot at the Israelis, but you could be interposing yourself between the Israelis and the civilians who are being shot. And in a situation where children are being shot dead, is it not your duty to do everything you possibly can? Everything you can, including driving your armored vehicles up to the Israeli positions to shield people. Well, why were you not doing that kind of thing?
Well, you have to talk about the old blue line. You were in specific positions, because exactly. So we were in other positions, and in other positions with other vehicles also to do exactly what you're saying right now. At the same time, we are there at the request of the Lebanese army. We are there because we were asked to be there, and we were there because we are in their support. But it's not within our mandate to control the crowds, as the Lebanese army were trying to do. But this is what we did in definitely other parts of the blue line. And again, there was a lot of conversation ongoing. There was not on the ground between the leadership of the mission and the parties and the IDF to prevent the firing against civilians. So work was done, but of course, the full prevention of what happened on the day, it's something that would be very difficult in terms of when you have population going there. Even if you put your tanks in front of firing Markava or firing positions from the RAF, would be very difficult. And again, a lot of this was done in different other positions along the Blue Line. So we have a certain number of patrols, and we had been requesting 12 different positions along the Blue Line by the Lebanese army on the previous days, and that's what we did on the day. So our work is now in order to ensure that something like this would not happen again. There is a lot of work done underground that is not only the work that you see visibly along the Blue Line that peacekeepers are doing, and also they're doing at the political level between the parties.
Your answer makes me think, and anyone who hears of a situation where civilians are massacred by forces within sight of UN peacekeepers, their mind will automatically go back to Srebrenica. This, of course, is not on that scale. Mm-hmm. But I dug out the report to the General Assembly by Kofi Annan, who, as it happens, was a friend of mine. The report he gave on Srebrenica and what went wrong there. And there are a couple of things in it I'd like to put to you, because it seems to me these are fundamental problems which are still not addressed. And he said that the problems arose from the inadequacy of symbolic deterrence in the face of a systematic campaign of violence. The pervasive ambivalence within the United Nations regarding the use of force by the United Nations, and an institutional ideology of impartiality, even when confronted with attempted genocide. Those, Kofi said, were what went wrong at Srebrenica. And it seems to me you basically have those problems here too. That
I think
there's this ambivalence about the UN using force to protect people. There's a desire to be seen as impartial, even when one side is massacring civilians. Don't you see those problems?
I see completely the contrary in relation to Srebrenica that you're mentioning. I'm glad you brought it up, because it was a completely different situation. If you look at what happened with UNIFIL, especially from October, when we were asked to leave from the south of Lebanon, the IDF asked UNIFIL to leave, and very forcibly. We were attacked, we were targeted. Did we leave? We stayed. We were the only international presence in south of Lebanon. Very limited monitoring capabilities, I agree, but we stayed at the risk of our peacekeepers to be hit and to be targeted. And we had people injured. Luckily, we didn't have fatalities. We had people within our bases, 50 positions along the Blue Line. No one has left. No one of the 10,000 peacekeepers left the south of Lebanon when no one was present in the south of Lebanon. There was no other authority in south of Lebanon. And there was a decision taken because we wanted to be there, because no one can tell us to leave. We need to be there, even if with the limited capabilities. It was important to have a referee, even an injured referee, to be present. And we continue to support local populations. We continue to bring assistance to the few people that were left in the south of Lebanon. The conflicting activities of humanitarian organizations, of UN agencies, of the Red Cross, this was done on a daily basis. So this has not stopped us from being there. So very different from what happened in former Yugoslavia. We stay there, but again, we have a limited capability in terms of authority and Chapter 6 of the Security Council. If the international community wants us to do more, to use force, it would be a Security Council decision, and would be a decision from troop contributing countries to enforce the mission's mandate. But what we did at the time, I think, was something that no one else did before. We didn't leave, we stayed.
No, I accept that, and I know that you came under fire. You had watchtowers destroyed. You had Israeli tanks knock down the gates of some of your compounds. And I accept what you say in that instance. But there's still, to me, it doesn't answer the unresolved question of why we have a force here which is more heavily armed than any UN force I've ever seen. You have main battle tanks. You have mobile howitzers. You have anti-aircraft batteries. And there appear to be no circumstances in which you envision any of those weapons ever being fired. Why, if your mission is essentially one of mediating and advising, and delivering supplies. Why isn't it done by military observers with binoculars and civilians in SUVs? It seems, to an outsider, it looks extraordinary that you have civilians being shot dead, and you have main battle tanks and howitzers, and the full panoply of military power, which available to UNIFIL, doing nothing. What is the purpose of all this heavy equipment?
We also have to think about the power of deterrence with equipment. Again, it's also a decision from troop contributing countries to protect their own troops, their own peacekeepers, even for self-defense. So there is a different posture also from different countries, and want to bring in a peacekeeping operations. As you know, it's up to countries to decide if they want to be contributing to a peacekeeping missions, the soldiers they want to send to the mission, and the type of weapons and armaments that they will bring to the mission. But again, despite the facilities and the equipment that the mission has that can be also used as a deterrent, we are still under Chapter 6 of the Security Council. We are not under Chapter 7, so we cannot enforce peace, and we don't want to become part of the problem. We need to be part of the solutions. So we cannot, using weapons, even in self-defense, unless there is a real scenario where self-defense is needed, would only trigger more violence and bring us to be part of the conflict. We have been asked several times, even when we were hit with the Markava tank in the tower that you just mentioned, why we didn't react to the fire, why we didn't respond to the fire when IDF troops were inside some of our bases. We also have to be very pragmatic about the use of fire, if that will trigger more violence or will be that a solution. So this is a question that we need to ask. So we also have to look at what did not happen, and would be very difficult to check it. Whatever is more tangible and visible is to see what happened and the distractions in the south of Lebanon and all the violations, and I fully agree of all the violations that occurred in south of Lebanon during all this period. But we also have to see what did not happen and how things were also deterred and prevented because of a presence in south of Lebanon of an international community that has been trying as much as they could to do the work. But again, there is no military solution to this situation. The only solution is diplomatic and political, and it's not within our mandate to work on a diplomatic and political level. That will be for the main stakeholders and for other member states to do that. So we are doing whatever we can within our mandate.
So if the heavy military equipment of UNIFIL exists not to defend people in South Lebanon, but to defend UNIFIL, that seems to me rather
No, I also said,
like,
also for protection of civilians in case of imminent threats of violence, but at the same time, we also have to be very pragmatic, like what happened on the 24th. We need to try to work on prevention, mitigating the risk, and also make sure that, as it happened the following weeks, there will be a limit in the violence used, and try to negotiate at a different level to try to prevent these things from happening. And again, Lebanese army and Lebanese authorities, they've been issuing directives to the population. And we have been there to try to assist the Lebanese army on this. But again, this is the population went then voluntarily, and we did whatever we could at the time, and also in other parts of the Blue Line, in order to prevent it. But again, that was not something that was within our capabilities.
Now, you and I have both seen, within 20 miles or so of your main base in the south, where you are normally based, the massive destruction which Israel has wrought on homes in particular. But really, as you go up the border there, there's a zone 3 or 4 kilometers deep, and which continues at least 15 kilometers up that border. I don't know how far it goes, so that's as far as I've been, where every building is destroyed almost. 90% of all buildings are destroyed. A high percentage of those buildings were destroyed during the ceasefire by demolition. And also I've been to Hiam, which is also much destroyed. And another thing I've noted there is the amount of looting from destroyed buildings, where the Israelis systematically looted high-value goods from people's properties. These are all war crimes. And again, it may seem very strange to people that war crimes are happening, the demolition during a ceasefire of thousands of homes happening within earshot of your bases, and you don't appear to be doing anything about it. Or if you are doing anything about it, it's not visible to the public. So do you have a role in documenting this? Do you report it to the International Criminal Court? Do you report it to the International Court of Justice, which is a UN body, of course? How are you reacting to this? And have you made representations to the IDF to say, you do know you're not allowed to blow up civilian houses, you should not be doing this during a ceasefire anyway? Explain to me how this works, because again, to an outsider, it looks very strange.
This is absolutely all not only reported, and also reported not only to the parties, it's reported to the international community, reported to the Security Council. We have been very vocal that these are violations, not only violations of 1701, it's violation of Lebanese sovereignty, violation of humanitarian law. This is something that has been reported, and we continue to report, and everything will be publicly disclosed in all the SG's report. And our role will be there also at the time. We are still actually working in all these areas to try to clear debris, clear the roads, speaking of protection of civilians, UXOs that have been placed in all these areas, in all these villages, clearing mining. These are all things that we are doing on a daily basis everywhere throughout the area of operation. So everything has been reported, will be reported, and will be part of all the SG's report to the Security Council. So these are all violations, and we have been very clear that these are violations of 1701. If we are speaking about violations of the cessation of hostilities arrangements, this is something that is not with us, but is with the cessation of hostility, with the mechanism that is working on this particular issue. We can only detect violation of 1701. Because we don't know what are the violations of the cessation of hostility mechanism, because it has not been, we are participating in the meeting and we are supporting the redeployment and the withdrawal of the IDF troops from areas that they are occupying right now, but our role is strictly defined by Resolution 1701. So that's what we're working on. And again, the implementation of the resolution of 1701 is not with the mission, it's not for us to implement the resolution, is with the parties to implement.
Let me come on to that question of the mechanism, because this is interesting, because it seems to me the UN has got itself into a false position here. Because you are associated with the mechanism, because you are mentioned as you say you're not really a member of it, but when it was set up, the press releases and the announcements all said it would be hosted by the United Nations and chaired by the United States. And I'm not sure what hosted meant. It seems to mean you get to make the tea, as far as I can see. And the UN, and you're at the meetings, so you're associated with it, but it's run by an American general. Mm-hmm. And the bombs which last night, at least 20 bombs fell on Lebanon. Today more have been falling. They're all American bombs. They're not just American manufactured bombs, they're American paid for bombs. It's the Americans, by proxy, who are breaking the ceasefire. And you've somehow got yourself associated with a mechanism controlled by the people who are the people breaking the ceasefire. Is this not... Why is the UN on any committee where it's subordinate to a member state? That seems to me a false position, and that you're now associated with the failure of that mechanism to do anything about ceasefire violations.
I think there is a big misunderstanding here on this association, because we are participating, we are of course supporting the work of the mechanism in relation to the withdrawal of IDF troops, the return and the redeployment of the Lebanese army that we are very active to work with in the redeployment, and on the implementation of Resolution 1701. So the participation of UNIFIL to these meetings is not only about participating and giving the venue for the participation, but we do have, of course, a role in relation to be there and in relation to see how Resolution 1701 has been implemented. Any other issues that you're just mentioning now on the US and the role and the way that this cessation of hostilities agreement was drafted, this is a question, of course, that needs to be asked directly to the US, who is chairing together with France these meetings. We are doing whatever we can in relation to 1701 and even in relation to reporting violations. Again, the cessation of hostilities agreement is something that has been drafted and brought up by the United States. But again, it's important that we have to look forward. We have to look forward to the full redeployment of the Lebanese army in all the villages that they are presently occupied by the IDF. And this is our main focus right now. So to add that kind of cooperation that we had for the last 18 years, since 2006, and now it's important to give that kind of support to the Lebanese authorities to bring back state authority to the south of Lebanon.
Angelo Tenenti, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.